What's up, people of the internet? My name is Dabacab, and I have huge news today. We have the biggest card reveal yet with more than over a dozen cards. So let's dive right in. All right, so Richard Garfield, the original designer of Artifact, recently did an interview with IGN, and with that interview came a whole bunch of new cards. So we're gonna take a look at each card one by one and discuss its potential strengths and weaknesses, starting with Bellow. Bellow is a green 2-cost spell that reads, move a creep to a random other lane. So this is 3 mana, less expensive than Intimidation, but you can only use it on creep instead of hero, so much less functionality. Overall, I think this card has some decent potential. It's sort of like a 2-mana kill spell, except it's not really a kill spell because it just goes to another lane. And Intimidation is a much better card overall because Intimidation can also be used as sort of like a silence, right? If you've got a blue hero in the lane, you play Intimidation on the blue hero, and then, you know, once the blue hero's out, they can't cast any more blue spells. Also, if you've got your own hero stuck in a lane, which can be problematic, you can cast Intimidation on your own hero and teleport them out. So Bellow doesn't have that functionality, and moving heroes around is much more useful than moving creep around. So I just don't know if this is going to be very useful compared to Intimidation, even with the mana reduction. But considering that green doesn't have a whole lot of offensive card killing capabilities, this might actually see play just because there isn't really much else available to them. Next up, Crippling Blow, a red spell that costs 4 mana. Modify a hero with -2 attack. So this card, not very good. -2 attack for 4 mana, it's just kind of overly expensive. I know red cards just tend to not have the most amazing spells in the world, but I mean, red tends to be super tough as it is, so if you're running red heroes, you probably have a very defensive deck. Just like, not defensive deck, but defensive heroes, so I don't know how useful the -2 attack is going to be. You're probably better off going with a more offensive or just more reliable, heavy-hitting option. You're just not going to get a whole lot of mileage out of -2 attack. Next up, Arcane Assault, a 4-cost blue spell. Deal 2 damage to the enemy tower, draw a card, and get initiative. So a lot going on with this card. It deals 2 damage to the enemy tower, which is basically negligible. That's next to nothing. It's a creep hit, essentially. But it does draw a card, so it replaces itself. We call these cantrips. So that's kind of nice, and it's got get initiative. And from what we've seen, blue doesn't have a ton of get initiative options. So maybe blue is bad at getting initiative. We know that red is quite good at it. It has very cheap, like 1-cost spells that get you initiative. So maybe blue can do it, but they have to invest much more mana to do it. So this might just be the best get initiative option that blue has available. So even though the card, you know, the effects aren't that great individually, together they're kind of decent. I mean, basically just ignore the 2 damage to the enemy tower. It's practically worthless. It's just draw a card, get initiative for 4 mana. Not too bad. And, you know, the 2 damage is nice, but I mean, that's not really why you're ever going to draw this card. You're just using it to get initiative next turn so you can cast, you know, Echo Slam or Thunder God's Wrath or some card like that. Next up, Defensive Stance, a 2-cost red spell that reads, give a hero +3 armor this round. It's okay. You can help your hero win a fight. It's just, you know, that's kind of the issue with red. Does red really need much assistance with this? I guess I could see this being run in like a red-blue deck where you need your red heroes to sort of tank early game and survive long enough for your blue heroes to come online. So if you've got, you know, a Zeus or even better a Luna that you're trying to keep alive as much as possible, then I guess Defensive Stance can help you do that. It's just, in general, I just don't know if 3 armor for 2 mana is really going to be worth the card slot. It feels like there's probably better cards you could play. Next up is Lost in Time. I'm not exactly sure if this is a new card. I think it's possible this got leaked, but I honestly can't remember, so we're just going to reveal it anyways. Lost in Time is a 6-cost blue spell. Give 3 random cards in opponent's hand +3 lock. Lock basically means you can't use that card for 1 turn. So if you play this card on the enemy, then 3 other cards will just be unusable for 3 full turns. Kind of, this is sort of like Artifact's version of counterspelling. You know, in Magic, it's like you play a card and then the enemy is like, oh, I counterspell it, so your card doesn't happen and it just gets destroyed. In this case, Lock is kind of counterspell-esque in that it delays, but you can cast it eventually. The thing to remember about Lock is that games end really quickly in Artifact. I think, I don't know what the average turn time is, the average like max mana when a game ends, but I would guess that most games end by like probably 8 mana. So if you can make it to like 6 or 7 mana and then play this, then there's a good chance that that +3 lock is basically going to be just the enemy just does not have those cards, right? Because the game's going to be over by the time they get a chance to play those cards, because games end so quickly in Artifact. Plus locking stacks, so if you cast 2 of these, like Lost in Time in one lane, and then next turn, next lane, Lost in Time in the next lane, and you hit the same card with lock twice, and that's going to be +6 turns of lock. So that card, that's just a dead card. It may as well not exist. So if they're hoping to do some sort of crazy wombo combo, lock can really, really screw up the enemy deck. So I can see Lost in Time being a popular choice if just wombo combos or storm decks become super popular in the meta. Glyph of Confusion. I think this was actually reviewed, but we'll just do it again anyways. 6 cost, blue improvement. Whenever a unit enters the lane, stun it this round. So, you know, if an enemy deploys a hero, if they play a creep, it just gets stunned, it takes a hit, it can't attack. It's defensive, it slows them down, not too bad. The nice thing about this card is that if you put it in a lane and then the enemy deploys a hero into that lane, then that hero comes in stunned, meaning they can't cast any spells there. So if you're like trying to win back a lane from the opponent, and you're deploying heroes and they're deploying heroes into that lane, this card can really swing the tempo in your favor 100%. Next up, Cleansing Rites, a 4-cost green spell. Purge your opponent's effects from a hero. This is like a crappier version of Aphotic Shield, so I'm not sure how popular this is going to be when Aphotic Shield is available. Of course, this is free from a hero's restrictions, so if you don't want to play Abaddon, then I guess this is the only option. Question is, are debuffs going to be popular enough, common enough to really justify this being a slot in your deck? And my guess is probably not. I think most heroes, most units, most effects would just flat up deal damage or kill a hero or something like that. And I think probably debuffs aren't going to be popular enough for this to really make its way into most deck slots. Next up is Caught Unprepared. This is a 4-cost green spell with incredible artwork. Stun a hero until they equip an item. So this card is very, very hit or miss. Best case scenario is it's basically a 4-cost stun that the enemy can't do anything about. Like maybe they need to save up their gold for something expensive, or maybe they don't have enough gold to buy something. So it could just basically stun a hero for multiple turns and you get insane value out of it. Though another scenario is, you know, you play Caught Unprepared on someone and they instantly play an item card on it. So it's kind of a gamble. I think in order for this card to be useful, you have to really, really pay attention to what the enemy is doing, how they're playing, and what they're doing with their cards. Luckily, whenever someone buys an item card, you can see that card in their hand. Like you can't see what it is, but you can see that the back of it is gold colored, so you know they have an item card. So if you really pay attention to like how much gold they spend when they go to the store and how many item cards they have, then Caught Unprepared could maybe have value. But if you tend to ignore that stuff, then I think this card probably isn't for you, because like I said, you're going to run into scenarios where this card does absolutely nothing, because you played on a hero, they play an item, and you just wasted a card. You wasted 4 mana doing squat. Next up is Revtel Signet Ring. Now, unfortunately, during the interview, we couldn't actually see the gold cost of this item, so we don't know how expensive this is, but it has a very cool effect. Equipped hero has +4 health and -3 bounty. So this is the perfect item to put on a hero that you expect to die a lot. The plus health is going to make it a little bit tankier, and the -3 bounty is going to punish you less when they do inevitably die. Might be kind of tempting to put this on Rix. Of course, you know, you don't really care about buffing Rix's health that much, because you want to give him offensive stuff like weapons instead, because you don't really care that much if he dies. But giving Rix -3 bounty, I could see that not being too shabby, you know what I mean? Next up is Juke, 1-cost green spell. Swap an ally with one of its allied neighbors. This is super cheap, so the effect is kind of weak, and the effect is useful. It's just, I don't know how useful this is going to be when you have Rebel Decoy, because Rebel Decoy can be played on turn 1, and it also swaps places with a unit on the board. So why not just play Rebel Decoy instead, which also gives you a body to block damage, a body to deal damage, I guess I could see this being played, but 9 times out of 10, I think you're probably better off playing a Rebel Decoy just because you're going to get much more bang for your buck. Or if you want a more expensive card, you could raise the stakes with this red spell. Raise, it costs 5 mana. Condemn all enemy improvements. Now, we've learned that red kind of does like destroying improvements. We've seen other cards in red that has that similar effect. But in general, I think you're better off with smash their defenses. It's much more reasonably priced, and on top of that, it draws you a card. So in general, even though raise does condemn all improvements, I really do think you're better off going for the single target option, because card draw is amazing, and there's just going to be a lot of scenarios where you don't have multiple improvements that you need to destroy. Sometimes you just want to destroy one improvement. So probably don't take raise unless improvements become insanely popular at some point in the game. Until then, just stick with smash their defenses. Next up, Thunderstorm, a 6 mana blue spell. Deal 4 damage to each enemy. So this just goes into blue being phenomenal at AoE, and the important thing to note about this card is that it is the perfect amount of damage because it is just enough to kill melee creep. Of course, it will also take out, heroes and other creep with it potentially, but 4 is the magic number. You don't want 3 damage, you don't want 2 damage, you want 1 damage. 4 hits the sweet spot. So for that reason, I could see this card actually being pretty popular. Hitting the enemy's side of the board while leaving yours, completely safe and taking out melee creeps 100% of the time, that's fantastic. So I could see this card being a staple in a lot of blue decks. Is it better than Annihilation though? Because, Annihilation kills heroes, it kills massive creep. Probably not. I think Annihilation is probably going to be more popular, but since Thunderstorm has such good stats, I think there's a good chance that it will be popular in some decks. Next up is Avernus's Blessing, a 3-cost green spell. Modify a unit with +2 attack. Now, can anyone out there please tell me why on earth you would want to put this in your deck when instead you could put Mists of Avernus in your deck? Both cost 3 mana, except one gives +1 attack to all units in your lane, and the other gives +2 attack to 1 unit in your lane. So, all you need to break even is to have 2 units for Mists of Avernus to give you value, whereas with this, plus Mists of Avernus, it stays around. It's an improvement. So you're going to get that +1 attack turn after turn after turn after turn after turn. So I don't understand Avernus's Blessing. It seems real bad. I don't think you should use it. I think you should use Mists of Avernus instead. Don't play this card. Next up, Rolling Storm, a 3-cost blue spell. Deal 2 damage to all towers in all lanes. All towers means it's going to hurt your towers as well. I don't think this card is very good because the thing to remember about Artifact is that you don't need to damage all towers. You just need to damage 1 or 2 towers. So why would you want to invest some of your cards, some of your mana in destroying a tower that you don't care about? So on top of that, you're also damaging your own towers as well. So I just don't think this card's going to be very popular. The only place where I could potentially see this having a place is if you're doing some sort of really hyper aggro, hyper aggressive blue-black deck that's all about just throwing as much damage as cheaply and as quickly as possible into the enemy's face. And then maybe this will find a place, but in general, I think that you're probably better off taking single target tower damage instead of multi-tower tower damage. And if possible, you're also better off taking a card that doesn't hurt your own towers. So I don't think this card's going to be very popular, but who knows? Maybe someone will prove me wrong with a spectacularly fast aggro deck. Next up, Whispers of Madness, a 2-cost blue spell. Have these all been spells? It's been a boatload of spells. I think that they might have actually all been spells now that I think about it. 2 cost, stun an enemy this round and stun allied heroes in all lanes this round. Wow, this seems really bad. Sure, it's super cheap, but stunning an enemy this round and then stunning all allied heroes in all lanes this round basically means you can't cast any other spells. This is the last spell, the last card you play, because all your heroes are going to be stunned and then they can't do anything. So really the only way I could ever see this being used is that this is the last card you play in the last lane, because obviously if you use this in lane 3, it doesn't matter that your heroes in lanes 1 and 2 are stunned because they've already taken their actions. So I could see this getting play in lane 3, but in general, I'd be very surprised if anyone played this because the risk and the reward is just so low. The big problem with this is that even it's cheap, so the idea is it leaves enough mana to do something else, except it doesn't work that way because any mana you have left over you can't make use of because your heroes are stunned. So I don't think this is a very good card. Next up, Friendly Fire. This is another card I think might have been revealed. In fact, I'm pretty sure it has, but just in case, this is a 6-cost blue spell. Choose 2 enemies, they battle each other. So best case scenario, this is 1 card that you use to kill 2 enemy units. Worst case scenario, it doesn't do anything. There's only 1 unit on the board, enemy unit on the board, or they just hit each other and don't die. If you got 6 mana, I think you're probably better off using Annihilation, or what was that other one? Rolling Thunder, I think it was called. So I just don't think this is going to be spectacular unless really, really high attack, low defense decks become super popular. Like maybe black-red decks, become dominant with. And in that case, you might want to run this card just because you can have, like Phantom Assassins kill their Debbies and vice versa. So maybe then to be useful, but in general, probably better off with Annihilation. Next up, Divine Intervention. This is sort of a budget version of Hand of God. Hand of God is 7 mana versus Divine Intervention's 5. They both give damage immunity to all allies for a round, but Hand of God also heals them. So you get a little bit more value out of Hand of God, and Hand of God, of course, is tied to a hero. But Divine Intervention, the fact that it's free from any hero restraints and damage immunity to all units this round, not too shabby. I could see this, being paired with other defensive heroes like Omni Knight or Enchantress who can heal. So the Divine Intervention gives you a little bit of a chance to stabilize, throw out some healing spells, and recover. So you kind of almost don't even need Hand of God because green is so good at healing anyways. And in other news, they updated the board. It used to have this sort of like tavern vibe where it looked like 2 people were just hanging out at a tavern and there's like gold coins and drinks and daggers just sort of scattered around the table. But they replaced it with a sort of ring effect that makes it look much more, I guess, regal and official. And in my opinion, more polished and better looking. So I like the new board much better. It's clear that the Artifact team is hard at work polishing the game, making it look as cool as possible. So overall, this is an exciting, I don't want to say leak, a reveal, exciting reveal. Tons of new content. The game clearly is in good hands with Richard Garfield giving guidance to the Valve team. So let me know what you thought of these cards. Do you have any favorites, any standouts you think is going to be broken or completely worthless? I'm looking at you, Blessing of Avernus, or Avernus's Blessing, whatever your name is. No one cares because no one's going to play you. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Dabacab out.